A Russian military unit recently collapsed near Chasy. The soldiers shot their own platoon commander and then surrendered to Ukraine in large numbers. This event is not an isolated case. It is one of the clearest signs that the Russian military is breaking under pressure. Discipline is falling apart, morale is dropping, and Russia's war machine is starting to turn against itself. Let's look at what caused this shocking mutiny, what it shows about the condition of Russia's forces, and how Ukraine might use these internal cracks to gain an advantage on the battlefield. First, let's go over the details of the incident. According to intelligence from the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, the mutiny happened when Russian soldiers refused to follow orders to attack heavily fortified Ukrainian positions without enough artillery or armored support. Essentially, they were being asked to carry out a suicide mission. When their commander threatened to execute any soldier who refused to move forward, the soldiers turned their weapons on him instead. Interestingly, this information did not come from Ukrainian soldiers. It comes directly from the Russian troops who were involved and witnessed the entire event. After killing their platoon commander, the soldiers had no safe place to go except to surrender to Ukraine. Under Russian law, they would have been arrested and likely imprisoned by Russia's military police, who have reportedly already learned about the mutiny and started searching for the deserters. Therefore, the soldiers quickly waved white flags to surrender as they crossed the contested front line. They were captured by Ukrainian troops, who later shared this valuable information. Ukrainian intelligence did not reveal the names of the mutineers or the exact location of the event, but it is believed to have taken place in Chasy, near the city of Bakhmut. This area has been heavily fought over even before Bakhmut fell during the slow, destructive warfare carried out by Russian forces. The loss of one platoon is not likely to change the overall situation enough for Ukrainian units to retake Bakhmut. Ukraine has long identified Bakhmut as one of its major tactical targets in the war, even though the city itself does not hold significant strategic value on a larger scale. However, this mutiny and surrender provide a clear look into Russia's ongoing struggles, not just in capturing Ukrainian territory, but also in keeping its own military motivated and moving forward. Russia is not only losing soldiers in battles, but it is also losing the will to win the war itself. This lack of determination could be disastrous for Russia's entire war effort. On top of this, the country is slowly facing economic, demographic, and geopolitical decline after 3 years of war. While Russian state media continues to highlight the capture of villages that Ukraine had already taken months earlier, the real struggle is happening far behind the front lines, within the databases, logistics, and supply chains that bring soldiers to the battlefield in the first place. The recent mutiny is just one sign of a deeper problem that has been weakening Russia since nearly the second year of the war. There's a severe manpower shortage, and the numbers show just how serious the situation is. At the start of the war, the Russian military was believed to have around 900,000 active troops, with about 100,000 to 160,000 of them positioned around Ukraine and ready to attack. When the invasion began and Ukraine successfully pushed back the initial assaults, Russia sent another 190,000 soldiers into the fight. It also increased contract options and benefits to attract more recruits. 3 years later, these numbers have changed dramatically. The active size of the Russian military is now estimated to be about 1.1 million, with around 660,000 deployed in Ukraine. But instead of becoming stronger and more experienced, the army is replacing its lost soldiers with recruits who are far less skilled and poorly trained. According to Ukraine's Ministry of Defense, Russia reached 1 million casualties around June 2025, counting both soldiers who were killed and those too badly wounded to return to combat anytime soon. Of course, these numbers come from Ukraine, which has every reason to exaggerate them for morale and propaganda purposes, so they should be viewed with some caution. However, even conservative U.S. intelligence reports estimated Russian casualties at around 750,000 by March 2025. If these trends continue, U.S. estimates suggest Russia will reach 1 million casualties by the end of the fourth year of the war. This is not just a setback for Russia. It is a complete breakdown of its military strength and integrity. The casualties Russia has suffered in this war are higher than in any conflict the country has been involved in since World War II. This shockingly high casualty rate has forced Russia to take increasingly desperate steps to recruit or conscript soldiers. With almost all of its pre-war troop reserves gone, most of the soldiers currently fighting on the front lines are relatively new and inexperienced recruits. The situation becomes even more alarming when you look at the results of these sacrifices. In areas like Kyiv, Russian forces have advanced by an average of only 50 meters per day. When you compare that pace to the size of Ukraine's territory, this progress is almost meaningless. And the cost of these minimal gains is not just measured in soldiers and equipment. It is also draining Russia's economy. The country is spending resources at a level comparable to World War II, with an estimated 40% of its federal budget going toward defense for a war that has left it isolated from many international agreements. The incident near Chasy involving the 20th Combined Arms Army reflects a larger pattern. Russia is losing its top military leadership faster than it can replace them. Russian sources have confirmed the deaths of 12 generals, while Ukraine claims an additional 4 have been killed. In addition, the independent Russian news outlet Mediazona reports that at least 5,138 Russian officers have been killed as of June 2025. This might seem small compared to the total casualty numbers, but it poses a huge risk to the entire war effort when you understand Russian military strategy. Unlike Western militaries, Russia follows a highly centralized command structure. Generals and high-ranking officers hold almost all the decision-making power, passing orders down the chain of command with the expectation that they will be followed exactly, without adjustments or consideration for the real conditions on the front line. This rigid approach has caused significant problems for Russia, problems that Ukraine has skillfully exploited throughout the war. Russia's casualties in this war are higher than in any other conflict it has fought since World War II. The massive casualty rate has forced the country to take increasingly extreme measures to recruit or conscript soldiers. With nearly all of its pre-war troop reserves wiped out, most of the soldiers currently on the front lines are relatively new and inexperienced recruits. The numbers become even more troubling when you consider Russia's minimal gains. In some areas like Kyiv, Russian forces have advanced an average of only 50 meters per day. When this pace is measured against the vast size of Ukraine, the progress is almost meaningless. Worse still, the cost of these tiny advances is not limited to soldiers or equipment. It is also financially crippling the country. Russia is spending resources at levels comparable to World War II, with about 40% of its federal budget going to defense for a war that has left it isolated from most international agreements. The recent incident near Chasy, involving the 20th Combined Arms Army, highlights another serious issue. Russia is losing its senior military leadership faster than it can replace them. Russian sources have confirmed the deaths of 12 generals, while Ukraine claims an additional 4 have been killed. Meanwhile, Mediazona, an independent Russian news outlet, reports that at least 5,138 Russian officers have been killed as of June 2025. While this may seem small compared to the overall casualty numbers, it poses a serious threat to Russia's war effort because of how its military operates. Unlike Western militaries, Russia follows a highly centralized command structure. Generals and senior officers hold most of the decision-making power, issuing orders down the chain of command that must be followed exactly, without adaptation to changing battlefield conditions. This rigid approach has caused major problems for Russia, problems that Ukraine has consistently exploited throughout the war.